We're heading into the month of November, so we want to make sure you know what Commander cards are worth buying right now.
I'm Mia, and I had a great time at MagicCon Vegas.
I'm BZ. I'm engaged to Mia, and we're saving up for a house and possibly a marriage in the future, which means we need to get our finances in order.
Well, today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to help. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better.
It actually really annoys me how the business model of all of these subscription services seems to be hook you with an initial deal, and then hopefully you just forget about it and end up paying money for months and months on end. Rocket Money makes it really easy to cut all that nonsense out of your life and save money by canceling these subscriptions.
I'm also using Rocket Money to set budgets and analyze our spending habits. You know, spending and watching all of those little spending habits can be really tough, but you actually get push notifications for when you go over a certain category to help you stay on track.
Rocket Money has helped save its users on average about $740 a year and over $500 million total in canceled subscriptions full of nonsense that we don't need.
To save more and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money today.
And go to rocketmoney.com/nitpicking or click the link in the description to get started for free, by the way. And you can also unlock even more features with the premium version. As a reminder, that's rocketmoney.com/nitpicking to get started for free. We're also sponsored by Card Kingdom, the best place to go to buy all of your Magic the Gathering stuff. Here's the deal. We all buy Magic stuff, products, accessories, cards, and we're going to buy them no matter what happens. Nothing could possibly stop me from buying those things. If you go to Card Kingdom through our link and you tell them we sent you by going through our link, you support yourself by getting awesome cards at a reasonable price and all shipped together at the same time. And you support us by helping out Card Kingdom and telling them we sent you. I said that.
Yeah, you absolutely said that perfectly. We're also sponsored by Moxo. Not now, later. And you can't guess where it is. We're also sponsored by ourselves and you guys because we have a Patreon, and you should go because if you want your decks looked at, or if you want extra content that is seen nowhere else, or a little bit of other things that I don't even have time to tell you, go check it out.
So much stuff we don't even have time. And Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you want to check out their 25th anniversary sleeves, the Dragon Starry Night sleeves, or the Creepy Bug sleeve with teeth, you can do that at their website, and you can save 5% on your order by using the code
NERDS.
So we're here with Most Worth Buying. That means we're going to recommend cards to you that we think are extremely worth their price right now. We're not saying to go out and speculate and try to move the market on these. We're saying if you have the X dollars, they're definitely worth picking up. They might even be worth more than what their price is right now, which we think makes for a great pickup. If you want to see a little bit of speculation from us, thank you, Miso, at the end of the video, stick around because we're going to be battling to see who has better specs.
We are battling to have a end of the year wrap up to see who wins, but all of these cards are home runs and we play a lot of them. So the first one is a staple in any black deck without a budget. It's Cabal Coffers at $19. It's a land that if you tap 2 and tap it, you can add black for each swamp you control. That is so much mana stapled onto one land, and I'm surprised that this land isn't higher.
This land by itself is responsible for some of the high play rates of mono black decks in general. This card by itself, along with Cabal Stronghold, warps the entire mana base around it in 1 and 2 color black decks because people want to maximize it. There's a bunch of ways to tutor for it since you're already in black, and it means that almost guaranteed you're going to have access to 10 mana in the late game when you start tapping this thing. It's really, really good. The only hit that it takes is in the early game where it doesn't tap for mana. You need 3 swamps just for this to break even, and you need 4 swamps before you start netting extra mana. But once you get to 4 and beyond, the card is very, very strong.
I love this. I mean, it goes great with Urborg if you can turn all of your lands into swamps, or it just doesn't care if they're basic swamps, they just care that they're swamps. So if you're playing it in a 2-color deck, for instance, and you have any lands that are typed like Island Swamp, this will still count for that count.
Yeah, this card is in the so good it's a little bit annoying category because it requires a very specific answer. If they can't answer your land, you're going to produce so much mana that as long as you have card draw to go along with it, you really can't lose the game from that point. And even if they can answer the threats that you deploy, you can deploy so many of them that you'll just overwhelm them eventually. And that's why this card is so strong. And it's not a question of, is Cabal Coffers strong? It's more of, hey, did you know Cabal Coffers is $19 right now? One of the best lands in the format is this cheap due to partially a Mystery Booster 2 white border reprint.
Plus, if unlike Nykthos, where you need a good board to actually have it profit, if your board gets wiped, Cabal Coffers is still insanely good. It'll help you rebuild faster than anybody else on the table.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I've even gone as far as to play this card in a 3-color deck alongside tutors and card draw and stuff. You can put it as a extra slot. You know, you don't play, if you're playing 34 lands, you just play Cabal Coffers on top of that because it doesn't tap for mana. But even in those 3-color decks, I've been able to make it work with Urborg and Tutors. So it's a pure auto-include in 1-color decks. It's a slam dunk, easy decision in 2-color decks. And I've even gone as far to play it in 3-color decks if you throw it in a spell slot as an additional land on top of what you were already playing. With Tutors and Urborg, it's definitely doable. This card is a house.
It's incredibly powerful, and I thought it was way higher than 19. I thought it was hovering around like 30. So at 19, I would pick that up in no time. The next card we have is a card that I play to go infinite with another card. It's Umbral Mantle at $3. 3 mana for an artifact. Equipped creature has 3 and untap it, and this creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it equips for 0. This is incredibly powerful. I play this actually with my Sylvala deck because you can make infinite mana with that, and also make her infinitely powerful.
Any creature that taps for more than 3 mana goes infinite with Umbral Mantle. Now, that's a lot of creatures that exist. Sylvala is but one of many. There are tons of ways to make it so that any your Bloom Tenders, your Karamitras Acolytes, Gaia's Cradle on a Stick, I can't think of what its name is, Circle of Land Dreams, whatever, something. That guy also makes more than 3 mana, which means you can tap the creature for 3 or more, untap it to give +2/+2, and just continuously generate mana. Also worth noting, even if the creature only taps for 3 mana, you can make that creature infinitely big. You don't generate infinite mana, but you do generate infinite power. And oftentimes, if you have other mana dorks or something, Umbral Mantle can be the enabler to make you go infinite and the payoff. If I've got 4 elves in play that can all tap for mana, once I generate infinite, I can move Umbral Mantle to each one, pay the 3 to untap it after tapping it with a mana ability, and then untap it to make those 4 creatures in this example infinitely large and kill everybody. This just has so many applications. If you see it, you should be scared because no one's playing this card if you are not dead to it. So if you see it and they don't have the combo in play, don't worry, it's in their deck.
It's so good. You could pour all of your mana into Thrasios, draw your entire deck, and put out all of your lands. There's just so many good things to pour this into, or a gigantic X-Spell, for instance. Umbral Mantle is incredibly powerful, and the white bordered reprint really brought its price down a lot. I thought this was hovering around 8 or 12. To see it at 3 is a home run of a deal. I would scoop this up instantly.
Yeah, I think this is a great pickup, and I don't think it's going to stay at $3, especially long term. This will creep back up to 10. It's not a card they're really going to reprint too much. This wonky product like Mystery Booster, great way to throw reprints of this card, but they've said, they don't really like the 0 equip cost, so I doubt we're going to see like a Return to Lorwyn Umbral Mantle.
This is just way too powerful in so many commander decks. I don't see them printing it anytime soon, even with power creep and stuff hanging around. So if you need a copy, now is the perfect time to get it.
All right, yeah, the next one, real weird. Sorry, Miso. Can you see him? He's just the weirdest little gremlin.
He's so lovey today. We just got back from Vegas, and he is just so lovey.
He's all over the place. Next up, we've got a ritual of sorts. It's Culling the Weak at $5. This is single black for an instant. It makes 4 black mana, but it has additional cost to cast it. You have to sacrifice a creature. So clearly we're talking about aristocrats or some kind of deck that has repeated access to a 0-drop or a 1-drop. I know in CDH, Rograk is the guy to enable this sort of card. If you have that level of fodder running around, Edgar Markov could also work. This is a huge mana boost. And this was a kind of one of those old crusty cards that people don't really necessarily even know about because it only had 1 printing and it was like upwards of $15 or something. Now it's down to 5, and it's a very real card to consider.
It was so expensive. CEDH was the only place I saw it played, but now that we have more access to it, I want to see people playing it more. You want to play it next to all of your like Dark Rits and stuff if you want to be bringing things out as quickly as possible. There are so many good mono black staples on this list, and this is one of them.
Yeah, the thing about rituals is that they are very, very strong if you can do one of 2 things after playing it. Either draw cards or win the game. And on the spicier end of things, sure, you can totally win the game. That's valid. I think maybe our audience is more on the side of play this and generate a ton of advantage after with like landing the 1 ring or landing some kind of enchantment that's going to continuously get you cards ahead of time, or a Bolas of Citadel or something like that. And now your opponents are going to be in such a rough spot. And this helps, following either A or B off a ritual helps you not invest all of your mana and extra cards into putting a threat down early and then just having it die.
Yeah, I think so. But if you can power up your commander, for instance, if you could pour this into like Crick or something, if you have a very disposable creature in the first turn and then throwing your commander out the second turn, that could put you miles ahead of your opponents, and that could really be the difference between like do and die. This is an awesome card, and I'm very happy to see it in the future site. Or is it white border?
I think it's white border. So definitely get one. Check it out. It's a really low investment to get in on this card. If you've got any kind of sacrifice deck or your commander generates card advantage, it's really going to be strong.
The next card is Deathrite Shaman at $3. This is a buzzy favorite, but I also love playing it.
It's an all-timer.
Hybrid black-green for a 1/2 that you can tap it to exile target land from a graveyard to add 1 mana of any color. You pay black and tap it to exile target instant or sorcery card. Each opponent loses 2 life. Or a green, tap it, exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain 2 life. This is awesome. I love this because it can help you be as a pseudo like mana dork, especially if a lot of people are playing fetches, or it could just be a little bit of graveyard hate with advantage. Not only are you getting something out of somebody's graveyard, because this never says only your graveyard, this is any graveyard, and then you can either gain life or have everyone lose life. Do this in response to a target of like a reanimate spell or something like that. This is an awesome card.
So on a 1-drop, we have the ability to make mana, to gain life, to make our opponents lose a total of 6 life, and to hate graveyards at instant speed. There's like no downside to playing this. I think you do want to be, at least for yourself, a deck that has fetches, or to play this in an environment where there are going to be plenty of fetch lands, because I think the most useful ability this has is to make mana and help ramp you in the early turns. It definitely stays relevant, though, in the late game when you can gain a couple life at the end step or prevent somebody from reanimating. You know, they're not going to just run reanimate into this most of the time, but you're going to be stalling that and keeping it locked away in their hand just from having this up, just keeping up 1 extra mana. Deathrite Shaman just does everything, and it's only $3 now. I think it was creeping up to $4 or $5 before this Mystery Booster reprint, so I'm happy to have it. This is a staple in every green-black graveyard-esque deck for sure. If you're going to fire off like a Grizzly Salvage turn 2, you're already set up for this.
Plus, the fact that it is black-green hybrid is really awesome, because if you're running a lot of basics in your deck, if you don't want to invest a ton into that land slot, this can still be coming down turn 1. I feel like the getting colors correctly in the first turn is so important, and having this flexibility is really a really awesome part of this card.
Yeah, you could fix your mana. If you only have access to a swamp on turn 1, you still have access to green on turn 2 if somebody fetched, thanks to Deathrite, and vice versa. So on top of the 4 things I already listed, it's also way easier to cast than a Llanowar Elves, which is just like totally unnecessary. Also, extra toughness for no reason. I love Deathrite. It's so busted, and we get to take advantage of it and just have the best mana dork in the format, in my opinion. Next up is another card that is busted and banned in many other formats. It's Gitaxian Probe, sitting at $3. It is blue or 2 life for a sorcery, and you look at target player's hand, and then you draw a card. Oh man, 0 mana cards are pretty open to being mistakes, and this is certainly one of them. You pay nothing in terms of mana, and you get something in terms of payout. That already is kind of silly. I think Mishra's Bubble and Urza's Bubble are pretty easy includes in your deck because they just make your deck air. They're just air, and they make your deck 1 less card. You're just that much more consistent. And Gitaxian Probe triggers prowess, all of your instant sorcery stuff. You can get the storm count up with it. You get a ton of information. Also, it's super relevant to be able to look at someone's hand, and since it is look and not reveal, that's not face up to everybody else. So you can lie about what's in their hand if you want to, and they can't say anything unless they want to like reveal their hand. That's also good for you. And you can also just say, hey, that person's a threat. We need to watch out for them. You know, you can play it vague too. It just gives you so many tools. And again, we're spending 0 mana.
Can you tell that BZ likes this card?
It's so good.
This is a Bauble-esque card, and as he mentioned, this is like air. This is great for the storm counters, and this is just a very good card overall. I've never had to play this turn 1. I would happily trade 2 life to look at somebody's hand, especially somebody who I think has a particularly powerful start, someone who might have played a Soul Ring turn 1, or someone who I'm afraid of who like has a combo then they could win in the first few turns. Being able to get that information and then also replace itself is the type of things that really make its way and make your decks more powerful.
Yeah, it could even reveal a big threat or a bomb or an overrun in somebody's hand and then let you know that you need to keep up a counterspell for it. You don't even have to say anything. You can just go, okay, I know about this, Crater of Behemoth. I'm going to hold up 2 for this Arcane Denial. Every time I see your board is silly, and then I'll make sure I get it. It's tough. The only thing about the Gitaxian Probe that you have to ask yourself is, what deck would I not play it in? Because like we said, it's never a card that could sit in your hand because you can always cycle it for essentially 0 mana. And it's tough to draw the line of where I do want it and where I don't want it. Now, I'm not too big on Ponder and Preordain because those are cantrips you have to pay mana for. And I think in a lot of decks, you're not really interested in. Even in the decks that don't care about spell slinging, which is where you normally see cantrips, I think there's plenty of room for a Gitaxian Probe, and there's plenty of utility for it. You definitely want this if you're any kind of graveyard deck or you care about having a card in the graveyard. You definitely want this if you're spell slinging. How do you feel about if you're not doing those things?
I think it's tough because I don't really play this card anywhere, and it's definitely a very good card, but I'm not playing it in my higher power blue decks because, like, Poison, I don't really think it has a home in there because I feel like if you're trying to do or die in, like, it's maybe not the best because it's like Poison. You need to get going or else you die immediately. And I feel like this is like, even though this is air, I feel like it just has better slots for that. I feel like if you have a lower land count, this is a really good thing. But if you're trying to like ramp or something, this might not be the best. It's just like, can I fill this slot with something better, something more crucial to my game plan? And I feel like that's why maybe I don't play it too much.
I think it's more of a like a synergy thing than a power thing. Like if you really want the room for an extra card draw spell, which this is not card draw, it just breaks even. If you want the room for an extra card draw spell or an extra removal spell, it's pretty easy to cut a card that is just like hot air, but it is very, very powerful. So if you're looking for power, I think Daxian Probe can probably slot into one of your decks.
Yeah, I think so too. This next one is a land that I play all the time because I can't get enough of 3, 4, and 5 color decks. It's City of Brass at $15. It's a land that says whenever it becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to you, and you could tap it to add 1 mana of any color. That is incredibly powerful. I mean, that's why we're all clamoring to have a command tower in all of our non-mono color decks. But I don't really care about the downside of it becoming tapped and dealing 1 to me because it just means I can power out my spells that much faster. I only need 1 life to win, and I don't care about the other 39 for the most part.
We get 39 uses out of this.
So we do have 39 uses out of this, and it'll help me cast my spells so I can win before I get to 1 life.
Yeah, 40 life is way, way, way too high. You don't need that much life in Commanders, so we're happy to use the extra life that we have laying around to make a bunch of mana with all of our untapped rainbow lands. This and Mana Confluence are very, very strong. I think we're a little bit spoiled with Command Tower, and even Wizards and the designers of Command Tower fully admit that it's a mistake. We're not getting more Command Towers. The untapped rainbow land that goes in every single deck is very, very like strong, and this is basically a tiny step down. This still, I think, should go in every deck that is not 1 color, like City of Brass, Mana Confluence. The utility of fixing your mana that well and ensuring that you never get color screwed. Even just an untapped duel that pings you for 1, we play that. Like if you're playing Karplusan Forest, I think you should play City of Brass. I understand that you always get dinged, but I don't think that's that big of a deal.
I am completely fine with it. Caves of Koilos, where Tokaja died, is actually something that I play in every single one of my decks because I can run it and because it's like budget enough. If this is within your budget at $15, I would more than happily windmill slam this into those decks. I'm playing it in 5 color, and it really helps me cast all of my spells.
Yeah, if you're looking to improve your mana base, I think this is one of the first places you should look. It's hard to say too much about a 5 color untapped duel, but I think people don't give City of Brass enough respect. Unlike Mana Confluence, you can't turn it off with an Urborg or Yavimaya because whenever it becomes tapped for any reason, even if you're using a different ability than the other one below it, you still take damage. But again, it's not a big enough downside. I'm still going to play this all the time.
I'm completely fine with it. If I die by the City of Brass, that's how I'll go. But I don't think I ever have. So that means it has 100% not killing me rate.
Well, Misa's back again, and now I think it's time for our next card.
The next card is Oracle of Moldiah at $10. 3 and a green for a 2/2. You can play an additional land each of your turns, play with the top card of your library revealed, and you can play lands from the top of your library. This is amazing in decks that care about landfall, in decks where you just want a little bit more advantage, and being able to see the top card of your library, even if everyone has to see it, will generate card advantage in the long run.
Every time you play a land from the top of your library, that is drawing a card. It's very, very strong. This is, I think, one of the standout landfall type cards because it does exactly what you want to do. It gives you access to lands that are not in your hand with the top of your library, and it lets you play extra lands so you can get twice as much landfall. It's also very easy in these landfall heavy decks to reset your top card with a fetch land or a scry or something off a temple or a surveil land, and now get more chances to hit those lands, which gives you more and more advantage. Plus, obviously, every time you play extra lands, you're now ramping and you're just further ahead.
As if land decks didn't need to be more powerful, but they also have this rocking at $10. I feel like all the land staples eventually go up because everyone knows how powerful land decks are in general in Commander, and I could see this spiking very soon.
This card was sitting at $40 for the longest time, and I did at the time, I remember thinking, no, not 40, definitely way too high. I feel like where I have this card in my head in terms of power-wise, what it plays as, This plays like a $25 card. I would not be ashamed, and I have not been ashamed in the past to pick this up for 25. So 10 feels like a steal. It's 100% worth $10. You will get more than that much mileage out of this card when you put it in a deck. I think there are cards that try to replicate this that can't exactly. They need a little bit more juice to get going. I know Augur of Autumn is one. This card is way better than that. So big fan of Oracle.
I mean, it just fuels itself. That's what makes it powerful. You could play the top, you could look at the top. It's just, and you could play additional lands. So even if you need your 4th mana to play it, if you have one on top, you'll have a 5th land soon enough.
Yeah, you don't have to play a landfall deck. You could just throw this in a deck. It'll still be good.
It'll just be advantage overall. But the next card is a card that's sweaty, and it is very good at $6.50. It is Grand Abolisher, white for a 2/2. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. This shuts off counter spells. This shuts off them doing anything on your turn. And if you're doing a combo type deck, or if you're just waiting to get that win and you really are afraid of counter spells, this is a great card to put in.
Yes, you cannot just throw this card in any deck. And I don't think that was really an issue before when it was like $28. People weren't clamoring to just throw this in a deck. But now that it's more accessible, I think that might be a mistake people make. This is for decks that can generally win with a couple of cards, like a string, like a combo, or have some kind of wacky turn with, I think maybe equipment decks is where my head goes, where you put all your stuff in one basket and then just kill somebody or take extra combats and kill everybody. Things that you really don't want interrupted by like really cheap instants that could destroy your whole life. So Grand Abolisher is great for that. It's really, really strong at protecting combos, protecting your Voltron, protecting some big swingy turn. Definitely for higher power decks, I think as you scale into the lower battle cruisery stuff, this card matters a little bit less. It's more efficient when you can actually consistently win in one turn.
If you're in one of those metas where it is very easy to get disrupted because your opponents are playing a lot of interaction, this can be an amazing meta call for that.
Yeah, also the thing that this does a lot for me in CEDH, and it can easily do for you in high power casual or just spicy brews, is if your opponents have one total answer, let's say 2 of them are tapped out, there's a blue player, they have one answer, they can counter something. You play Grand Abolisher right before you're about to win, they have to counter it. If they don't, you just play whatever it was and you win. And then if they do counter it, you just play your thing because they don't have any more interaction and you just win. So it is a must-answer bodyguard for any kind of win condition. And it's definitely $6.50 good. I don't think it was $30. That felt bad. I remember picking one up. It felt very bad. $6, I looked at it and I go, dang, I wish I could have got it for $6 because that's sick.
It's so good. Seeing it sub 10 feels amazing. And that means that having these spicier brews are more accessible to more people, and I want to play against them. But the next card is also a spicy one. It is Yawgmoth Thran Physician at $15. 2 black, 2/4 protection from humans, though that really doesn't matter for the most part. If you pay 1 life and sacrifice another creature, you could put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature and draw a card. If you pay black and discard a card, you proliferate. This is amazing. It's removal, it's card draw, it's proliferate if you need that, and coming down for 4 black mana makes it a winner. It's so good. I have this in my poison deck. It's so great. I've seen this in your decks. I'm always worried when I see this card.
So happy that this is $15 because I can easily see a world where this was never reprinted and it was $60. And I think it's that good. I think this card is like better than Shield Red, and that card's $80 right now. I think Yawgmoth is very, very strong, very, very worth $15. The warping effect that Yawgmoth has on a game just from being played, even before you activate it, no one's going to be able to attack you with similarly sized creatures or big humans on the ground. That is the most common creature type. Nobody's going to be able to effectively block your stuff or chump block them because you have the ability to take them out. People, even if they send everything at you, you're going to be able to align a bunch of chump blocks on their biggest things, kill their smaller things, draw cards, and not take almost any damage other than what Yawgmoth's doing. He has the ability to wombo combo if you have a couple Planeswalkers in your deck and you untap with both of them in play. You just win the game, which is a nice bonus on a card that's already a proactive sack outlet that is also removal and card draw that requires 0 mana to activate.
This is just too good. Just being able to be like, okay, it's removal and card draw all in one ability. And then also, if you just happen to need it and you have a couple of cards in your hand and a couple of mana, you can make that removal even stronger or proliferate your better things to be bigger. This is a great card. I am always very worried when I see this, and everyone is very worried when I play this.
Please lay down, buddy. Yeah, Yawgmoth is absolutely a must kill, and the problem with it is even if they can kill it, good for you. I can now proactively sacrifice the creatures that I have in play that I don't need to use. Goodbye, buddy. It was nice having you. And then kill your best stuff, kill all of your utility creatures, and then the removal spell resolves, and then Yawgmoth dies. But I just drew 4 cards, and I killed 2 creatures. So how bad do I really feel about it?
The card draw stapled onto this, I think, is the most powerful part because you can have a lot of rinky-dink creatures, and you could put -1/-1 counters on it, and you could still proliferate. And that'll be okay. That's really not bad, but the fact that you also draw cards from getting this while also getting death triggers if you want, and death triggers from your opponents if they want, and then just making things smaller or bigger if you have +1/+1 counters is really the fact that this card can do a little bit of everything.
There's only one thing to know about Yawgmoth that you might be on the lookout for is that his ability does target. So if you pay a life and sacrifice a creature and you target one of their creatures and it dies or is removed in response, you don't draw a card. There is a way to offset that, though. It says up to 1 target creature. So if you're worried about that happening, you just don't have to target anything when you sacrifice Yawgmoth. That was the one downside, is if they have a sack outlet, then you don't draw cards. But you could just go, oh, I really need the card. I'll just sacrifice my creature. Target nothing. Draw anyway.
I'd say Yawgmoth is one of the scariest humans that there is overall, both in the lore and just on the battlefield, because it is that good. But we are sponsored by Moxfield, the best place online to build decks, because if you're not building your deck on Moxfield, you're building it on a subpar site, and you can quote me on that because we love Moxfield.
You don't want to be using Redacted because Redacted is not going to give you all the tools you need to build an absolute killing machine to destroy all of your friends whenever you play Commander, or to build the most fun, non-killing, non-lethal fun machine that you've ever seen, because Moxfield just is that good. You can sort, tag, create, follow, comment, basically everything you've ever even thought of. You can do it on Moxfield. You should be doing it. Do it because we told you to, if for no other reason.
And because you should follow us. But the next card we have on here is another land, because we love our lands here. It's Fabled Passage at $6. If you tap it and sack it, you can search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Then, if you control 4 or more lands, untap that land. I mean, it's great. It'll reset the top if you need it. It'll find any basic that you really need, and it comes in untapped provided you play it at the right time. I really like this card, and it was sitting a little bit higher for a bit, but the reprint in Bloomburrow killed that price just a bit, and it has an awesome extended art now.
Yeah, this is a card that is totally the mid-power version of City of Brass. If you're trying to upgrade your deck, for tiny percentage points and get all the value, City of Brass is perfect. If you just want a nice dual land essentially for your 2-color deck, or a little bit of fixing for your 3-color deck, Fabled Passage is perfect. It's a totally fair card. I don't think it cracks the top pinnacle perfect mana base, but I think everything below that is very, very strong at. It's very totally fine. It gives you 2 landfall triggers, and crucially, unlike Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic and Escape Tunnel, it enters untapped if you're in the middle of the game.
I think it's very easy to have it come in untapped. I've never really had a problem with that because you're usually playing it in decks where you need the fixing, and then it's like if it comes in tapped, you just don't mind because you might be on a budget or something. Or you're playing it in decks where you can have extra lands hitting the field or just landfall in general, so you're able to get this out a little bit quicker because you're ramping into it.
Yeah, this is a great land. I think you can even get it for less than $6 too. 6 might be the all-time high for it, but Fabled Passage is just fantastic. Total easy slam dunk in any mid-power deck. It'll just help get the job done. With Oracle of Mul-Daya, it helps reset your top card.
There's so much to do with it. But the next card is a card that I have seen BZ play, and it's very, very good and very, very impactful, I think is the right word. It's Dragonhawk, Fate's Tempest at $4. 3 red for a 5/5 flyer. When it enters or attacks, exile the top X of your library. X is the number of creature cards you control with power 4 or greater. You can play those until your next end step. At the beginning of your next end step, it deals 2 damage to each opponent for each of those cards that are still exiled. That is a lot of words for a very powerful effect.
Oh man, I love Dragonhawk. I also love how annoyed you are by it. I've only played the card 6 or 7 times now, but every single time you just roll your eyes because it's a 5/5 flyer, so decent, presence on the battlefield. Does dish out some damage if you attack with it, but enters trigger is going to give you, I've never had less than two triggers off of that because you can have other stuff in play. That's cool. If I want to, that's like draw 2 cards if I can cast them right now, but if not, that's 4 damage, 4 damage, 4 damage. And if you give this thing haste, which red is extremely good at with a Anger in the Graveyard or a what's the red one? Call of the red one. The red one. The 2 and a red. Rising of the Day. That's not a sentence that sounds like a magic card to me, but Rising of the Day, Anger in the Graveyard, any number of haste enablers just make this go berserk. Even if we just use Rising of the Day, you go play your 5/5. Let's say you get two triggers, attack for 6 with it because it gets +1/+0. 2 more triggers. You have 4 cards in exile. Someone takes 6, and then all of your opponents take 8 damage. That's only if you don't cast them. Everything else means, you can play some of those cards, and now you've drawn those cards, plus you dealt 6 damage to each opponent. Like, my God.
It's so good. If you can copy this trigger, it's amazing. If it counts itself, so even if you can only play this, you'll still get 1 card out of it, bare minimum. And if you have a gigantic board, because, red, and if you cram it into a Gruul deck, it's so good at that, you'll just be getting that many cards off the top. You're never going to be playing all of them if you have more than 3 or 4, I'd say, and then that's just extra damage to your opponent. If this survives, which it has a very good chance of, it will still deal that much, and even over 2 or 3 turns, this will be amount to like chunking your opponents for maybe a quarter of their life over 2 turns is very easy, and I've seen it done.
This is, to me, worth way more than $4. I would pay 10 for this. I think this is better than a lot of the other mid-tier 5-mana dragons. I love the ability on it. I love that it replaces itself. So unlike those other 5-mana dragons, even if this dies the turn you play it, you still got your mana's worth. You still dealt a bunch of damage or got access to a couple more cards. This thing just does a little bit of everything. I like it more than Bone Horde Dracosaur and Thundermaw Hellkite, and in some situations more than Goldspan Dragon. And can you name another 5-mana Stormbreath Dragon? Can you name any more 5-mana Blade Dragons?
No, I only play like 7-mana dragons.
Like Old Gnawbone and Klauth?
Yeah, Agent Copper, all the Kalia dragons. So.
Yeah, all those really big boys. Anyway, Dragon Talk, if you want to annoy Mia and win the game, it's a pretty good bet for $4. What a steal.
I mean, it's so good. It's the fact that it doesn't even say cast, it's play too. So even if you exile 3 lands and you haven't hit your land drop, or you can play extra land drops, you can still play those lands, and then the rest will just deal damage to your opponents.
If left unchecked, it just kills them. If it is answered, you get your card back and you get your value out of it.
Its only limit is just like have creatures that are 4 or greater, and that's not that tough, especially in red.
Yeah, it's really not. That's what a good card. Next up is a card you love, so I'm gonna let you read it.
It's Blind Obedience at $3, 1 and a white for an enchantment with Extort, which means that even though it says hybrid white-black on it, you don't have to this doesn't like make you put it in an Orzhov deck. This is a mono white card. Artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter tapped. This is a great effect on the game. This shuts down immediate wins from treasures. This stops haste creatures. This stops so much, and then also the gain and drain you get from that extort trigger is so nice. I might find myself with a mana or 2 left over when I'm casting my spells, being able to pour it into extort and gaining 3 life and having to ding everyone for 1 is just incremental value that adds up over time. Plus, coming down at 1 and a white makes it a great turn 2 play.
What Blind Obedience does that a lot of other cards cannot replicate is it just gives you this special type of control over the game where now you don't have to worry about hasty threats. So, whatever is on the board is, for the most part, what you are concerned about. And so you can save removal spells accordingly. You're not really going to get surprised out of nowhere. You get to gain a couple extra life here and there, which can help make it so you're less likely to die to random attackers or some kind of gray merchant that somebody has that they're, sitting with in their hand. This is a very annoying card and hard to replicate, like I said, because there are other cards that say creatures enter tapped, but that's not quite enough. When this also hits artifacts and you're stifling their mana production, that gets really annoying for them. It means things like a Soul Ring, on turn 4 or 5, like a mid-game Soul Ring, aren't as scary. I don't know what other people say. Some people don't think a turn 4 or 5 Soul Ring is scary because they already have more mana. Like, I'm still scared of Soul Ring at literally any point in the game. It's just free mana. It's a ramp spell that doesn't cost anything. So I'm definitely still scared of it. I'm happy to have it enter tapped. Gives me a little more chance to react.
I've seen this do so much work, especially against colorless decks when they're like, okay, Soul Ring, Thran Dynamo, all this, and there's chaining into it. Yeah, this will just stop it in its tracks because all of that stuff is coming in tapped. If your opponent's decks rely on hasty things to make their mana dorks tap immediately, this will also stop that right then and there. Mm-hmm. This is such a good card, and I saw it dip down at maybe a low of like $1 or $2 with the Wilds print, but then it's creeping back up, and it's that good. I understand why it's creeping back up, and I would pick it up at $3.
Yeah, we can look at another card that's similar to this is Authority of the Consuls, and that's sort of like Blind Obedience's sister that never got reprinted. I think that card is creeping upwards close to like $20, and I could easily see that. Like, I think Blind Obedience is on that level. I'm not saying you should pay $20 for Blind Obedience, but I'm saying that $3 is absolutely worth it. I'm not really excited to pay $20 for Authority of the Consuls, But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Vital Venus and the most worth buying. It's such a cheap price because it is the card getting reprints. Super happy about it. And it's a great way to give yourself extra breathing room against these like Eldrazi decks, like you said, the Kozilek Great Distortion decks, and all of the hasty Lightning Greaves Mana Dorks nonsense. It just goes, nope, you got to figure it out. I'm going to play this 2-mana enchantment, and you can figure it out while I just develop.
I think it was most obvious how powerful this card was when Dockside was legal, and it would just shift over their winning turn to another turn to give yourself that time to get interaction. But being able to have it now and just being able to carry out your like mid-game plans if you're mid-range like we are players, or if you're just like a stacks player or a just very late game player, if you want to build up all this advantage and do a gigantic swing later, this will give you the time to do it.
Final Obedience, good card. Next up, also a good card. It's an uncommon that I've been only more and more impressed with. It's Aftermath Analyst. It's a $4 uncommon, but I could see it going up. And I'm not afraid to pay that price at all for this card because it's kind of cracked. It's 1 green for a 1/3. When it enters, you mill 3 cards, and you can pay 3 to black and sacrifice it, or 3 to green, sacrifice it. This does not require a tap. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. We really don't get this kind of card. It's sort of like a Splendid Reclamation that fuels itself and exists as a creature, which green can take much more advantage of than a sorcery. It's easy to recurve this if it dies or is milled, and you're already a deck that wants to mill because you're a land deck that's putting a bunch of stuff in the graveyard. This is just phenomenal. It's been so freaking good for me every time I see it. So freaking good for you every time I see it. It's one of the biggest grown tests because they play it, sacrifice it. Now they get, 5 or 6 lands back, and there's not really a way to destroy them all at once unless you are breaking the rule 0 talk that you probably had. So that's just permanent advantage they have.
I play this in Uro, and it is so good in there. If it doesn't even matter if you're playing a ton of like fetches or something. If it's like, things that you need to sacrifice, it's like sacrifice a permanent to get advantage, sacrifice a land to get advantage. I have a card that says sacrifice 3 islands to take an extra turn. This is where I'm playing it, and then being able to recur that again, get all of the lands back. Sometimes they sacrifice themselves, like the new Capenna like insta fetches. Yeah. Those are amazing. Sometimes it doesn't matter if they come back tapped, because if you have ways to untap your lands, or if you're getting extra turns, or if you just have the time to wait, or you're doing this on someone else's turn, you're going to be getting so much land the next time you're around. I've seen you play this with Lumra in, and that just goes hard.
I mean, it's crazy because Lumra is this big splashy mythic, and it's like enters, mill 4 and then get all your lands back. This is almost the same text box on an uncommon. For 6 mana, you mill 3 cards and then get all your lands back. Like, I understand you don't get the big creature, but that has not been the difference. The thing that I'm super psyched about is mill a couple cards and then get all my lands back. And I think it's a lot better than Splendid Reclamation because I can play it early and it actually fuels my game plan. Splendid Reclamation is this weird blank. It's either amazing or terrible. And Aftermath Analyst says, oh, if you don't want to activate it right now, that's fine, dude. I'll help you put more lands in the graveyard. I'm a creature, so if I die early, it's not a big deal. Or if you mill me, you can get me back. And I'll still have that awesome best-case scenario tacked on at instant speed without tapping. And it doesn't even exile itself, so there are worlds where you can do it again.
Being able to get it back is so powerful because it doesn't exile itself. I have played this and then just sacked it to get all my lands back, and then, either sacrificed some lands or played like Eternal Witness to get it back, milled a few more cards, and then did it again to get like 6 more lands out. It just completely multiplies your mana production, provided you already have the mill/sacrifice infrastructure that's being built into your deck to begin with. This card is so good. They have been printing so many good uncommons lately. I'm so surprised to see this stapled onto a 2-drop.
Yeah, gone are the days, I think, of World Shaper, which I was never satisfied with, and Splendid Rec, when I could just play Lumra and Aftermath Analyst and just have all of my troubles melt away with the ability to recur them. Why work for your cards when they just fuel themselves, right?
I mean, these are the cards that make me not play like Ramunap Excavator anymore. I don't play that card for the most part. I don't really want to play like Crucible of Worlds, for instance. I'd rather put cards like this in where it's putting lands in the graveyard and then getting them all back at once than like kind of wait and see, like pour out my mana, wait and see, and then play maybe 1 or 2 a turn.
Yeah, I mean, the Ramunap Excavators and the Crucibles are more for, there's like a split when you go for graveyard/land decks. They're the ones that want to play like Exploration and Oracle of Moldiah and then fetch a bunch of times with the same fetch land. We're talking more about the graveyard decks, even if you're just a creature heavy deck or an Uro deck that just wants cards to escape, this is where these cards are just going to be phenomenal. I absolutely love Aftermath Analyst. $4. Don't be afraid of that just because it's an uncommon. This thing reads like a mythic rare. So pretend it's a mythic and go buy it for $4.
It puts in so much work. The next card is a card that I play in multiple of my decks, and it's comboing with a new card coming out. It's Vito, Thorn of the Duskrose, and it's pre-ordering at $5 from Foundations. 2 and a black for a 1/3. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. 3 black, creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. I play this in Edgar, which it is very awesome in, and I play this in my Orzhov, Gain and Drain, Sorin, Markov deck. Very good in there. But a reason I think that this is going to go up is not just because it's very powerful or because it has been $7, $8 in the past, but because Foundations is also coming out with Bloodthirsty Conqueror. That is a vampire that has Exquisite Blood's text box, and with Vito, that is an infinite combo.
Yeah, Vito was already seeing plenty of play alongside Exquisite Blood, but now that there's a vampire exact version of it, which is honestly probably better than Exquisite Blood because it's a creature and black loves to move creatures around different zones and can get it back more easily. So we've got like 2 creatures that share a type that go infinite together and are both passable by themselves. Like even if you're just a vampire deck that plays a bunch of vampires because that's what they are, like an Edgar Markov deck, you're going to play Bloodthirsty Conqueror because it's just going to gain you life as the game happens. And you're also going to play Vito because even if you don't have life gain in your deck, he just gives everything lifelink. So that's a nice big, tap out and swing moment that can drain people. So these 2 are going to be paired a lot together, more so than Vito and Exquisite Blood, which is already probably also going to be in there. So even though Vito's getting a reprint in Foundations and that's the $5 pre-order price, I think he's going to go up from there.
I think that also that creatures you control gaining lifelink until end of turn is such a powerful effect. If you have a big board and you have the mana to spare, being able to say, oh, I gain a ton of life and also I can make target opponent, I'm not going to say basically lose, but if you have enough creatures, basically lose on the spot. This gets around where opponents can't be dealt damage because this is loss of life, and it is just it's a great closer. Plus, it puts you miles ahead if you have those creatures in play. I have this in Edgar, and since that builds a board immediately, giving all of those creatures lifelink just kind of like catapults me way farther than any of my opponents.
Yeah, I think there's a couple aspects of Vito that you maybe don't notice on first watch. The first one being that ability basically just says your creatures are unblockable. So if they've got a bunch of stuff, it doesn't matter. That damage is getting through directly because you're going to gain the life when they block, and then it's just going to go right to their face anyway. And also, each separate creature you hit with is a different instance of life gain. So if I hit with 5 2/2s, I know I'm getting 10 life, but Vito says 2 2 2 2 2, and I can send that at different opponents.
It's really, really good because if someone also doesn't have blockers, you send all the damage out there, all the lifelink happens, and then you just aim it at another person, which can just overall be closing the game for 2 or more people, depending on how big your creatures are.
And next we get to talk about something that I don't think this channel talks about enough, and that is MDFCs. Their lands and their spells. Whatever you need. There's a cycle of them that are pretty cheap right now, and I think they are well worth picking up. This is the Creature MDFC cycle from MH3. I think these are slightly overlooked when compared to the spell cycle from the same set. I think the spell cycle is a little bit better, but I still think we should be playing these 5 cards in almost literally, I'm not exaggerating, every single 1 and 2 color deck that we build. It's not necessarily that you should be playing these ones, but you should be playing like 4 or 5 MDFCs within your colors, and these are some of your better options. We have Witch Enchanter, which is 3 and a white 2/2. On the back, it's a land that can enter untapped if you want it to pay 3 life, and it destroys an artifact or enchantment. $3.50. Hydroelectric Specimen, which is 2 and a blue for a 1/4, and you can change the target of something to it to save your spell, and it's blue on the back. $1.29. Boggart Trawler, which Paducah bogs somebody on the creature side, and then is a land on the back. $1.79. Pinnacle Monk, which is a little pricey, but it does get back your best instant or sorcery, and I think it has prowess. $1 for that. And Disciple of Freyalise, which has been so phenomenal, drawing you cards, gaining you life, just getting you back into games you have no business winning. $1.79. These cards are all very, very good. Even if Hydroelectric Specimen looks a little stinky, the fact that they just threw a 0 downside, potentially untapped land on the back means I am happy to play it.
Disciple of Freyalise is my shining star. This is great in my elf deck. This is great in my decks where I have big creatures that need to be sacrificed, like Uro. This is such a good card, but also Pinnacle Monk won me a game pretty recently. I had a Mahadi game and I needed more card draw, so Pinnacle Monk got back my best sorcery card draw, and I drew the cards I needed to win the game. Boggart Trawler's been amazing. Being able to exile
My
people's
graveyard.
graveyards at Beezy's graveyard is what stops people from getting ahead, Beezy.
Stop me.
Hydroelectric Specimen, as Beezy mentioned, it is the stinkiest out of the 5, but being able to have that stapled onto an untapped blue land, provided that you pay 3 life, is something that is upgraded mostly from an island every single time, unless you're fetching for basic islands or really need basic islands. And Witch Enchanter, I love this. Being able to have this Rex Sage type effect on an untapped white land is always useful no matter where you're playing it. These are just amazing. I know we talk about MDFCs a lot, but these are, I'd admit, overlooked. Plus, they also count as sacrifice fodder if you need them, or as a chump blocker, or whatever, really. Having creatures on them are just amazing.
Yeah, these are special because they're creatures that do something. There's a cycle of creatures that don't really do anything and are tap lands on the back. We don't really talk about those. They're not really in this category. They are probably still playable, but we don't recommend it when you have so many better options at Rare and Mythic and Uncommon now for Modern Horizons 3. So, please play all these cards. I'm not kidding. They are great. I think if people ask, how we win the games we win, and, how we tend to we come to cons and we come to Vegas and we're here to play and we're going to kick some butt. And people ask how we do that. And part of the reason is we will flood less than you and we will get mana screwed less than you because we're playing probably more MDFCs than you. That's one of the ways that we can help get games, and our cards just have more modes.
And we will be able to play spells way more than you.
Absolutely.
But we are moving on to our speculation game. This is the time of the show where we close it out by talking about buying 5 copies of a card that we think are going to go up. And at the end of the year, we are going to be comparing to see who actually gained the most value over the year and won.
Yes, to clarify, we are not moving the market. We are not buying 100 of these cards to resell and to tell you that they're going to go up. We don't care if they go up. We're competing with ourselves, and we are buying literally 5 copies of these cards just so the game has some stakes.
I mean, we care a little because I want to beat you, but
right.
I care, but not enough to. I'm not moving the market with 5 copies. That's all I'll say.
With these. Yeah, we're thinking that we think these cards will go up, and we are going to battle.
This is just useless stakes for us, and you guys get to watch for once because we have all these useless stakes in our normal life. Last month, my spec was Tender Shoot Dryad. That was a reprint, and it went up $2. This card is amazing, and I would highly recommend picking it up, not just because I would win, but because also I played it in a couple decks, and it has won me a ton of games.
What's your spec this month?
But my spec this month is Embercleave at $8.50. We are looking to the future right now, and the future looks a little bit like Marvel. I think Embercleave is going to be great with 3 out of the 5 cards in Marvel, one of them being Captain America, where you can be dealing damage based on a card's mana value or an equipment's mana value, and Embercleave has a gigantic mana value to be able to act as removal. Storm, because she cares about how many times your opponents get hit, and this gives double strike and trample and a little bit of extra stats, so you can get that damage in and give your instants and sorcery Storm. And Wolverine, which doubles the damage that he deals to people, so being able to give him trample and extra stats and double strike will mean that people can die via commander damage. This is $8.50. This is a little bit more of the expensive specs, but as you guys may or may not know, I usually lean on the cheaper side of the penny stocks of specs, so I'm okay with taking this one as a little bit of a bigger one.
If you are right, Embercleave could potentially, double in price, and that'd be a huge lead going in. I'm taking the opposite approach. I've been on some more pricey cards lately, so I'm going for my previous spec, is up $2. It's Archdruid's Charm. Good for me. Hope it keeps going up. But my spec that I'm going for now, similar thinking, I'm going with Hexplate Wallbreaker. It's $1.50. I'm looking at a lot of the signs that I like to see when I'm looking at a card that could potentially spike. Only one printing, and that printing was in a random precon, and that precon was a couple years ago. I think that's all of the recipe for a card to potentially go up. Captain America loves this. It can you're gonna play Captain America, then you're gonna play this. You're gonna auto attach it with Cap's ability, attack, get an extra combat that will let you also auto attach something else and smash with it. If you want to sacrifice it, that's upside to Cap's ability. But I think that giving you extra triggers from Captain America might be making this one of the marquee cards for that deck. I'm not looking at Storm or any of the other ones, although Double Strike with Storm is hilarious on the Evercleave. That's really funny. I'm just going to go all in on Captain America. Hopefully that's the most popular Marvel card, and my card soars.
But if you want to see any of our previous month specs or cards that we think were worth buying last month and they're still worth buying this month, you should look at right about here.